First things first then, Patreon questions, because I was meant to do these on the first of the month. If you don't know, obviously I have a Patreon now. You can go and sign up to that. If you're in the $25 or above bracket, you get to ask me any question once a month. It's standard Patreon fare. There's some higher tiers that sort of give you access to doing like bespoke content and stuff like that. But if it's just a question you want me to dig into, do just ask it. If you haven't had your status assigned, so you can see the super secret Patreon channels, hit up a mod on the Discord, hit me up on Twitter or Discord or whatever, and we'll get that access set up for you. So the first question, it's an age-old classic from Jerky's Minion. If a bear and a gorilla had to arm wrestle, who would be your pick to win it and why? And this is pretty much scientifically determined at this point. It's not even a Richard Lewis opinion. Because while I believe that in just sort of hand-to-hand combat, a bear would win, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think even Joe Rogan has come around to that way of thinking. The truth is, when it comes to measured strength, like PSI or whatever the fuck they call it, a gorilla has a stronger lift because of its more fibrous muscles than bears. It's just bears obviously have ridiculous bite strength and big fuck off claws at their end of their hands. And also remember, they've got thumbs, so you can teach a gorilla to arm wrestle. You can't really. A bear doesn't have that luxury. So yeah, it's a gorilla every time, if you can get them to sit still and not give each other digs. If it's just a straight barroom brawl, it's the bear every time. Tasty AMG asked, what is the most strange behind-the-scenes esports story you have heard that you can share publicly? And I had to go digging in the crates for this one a little bit. What I've been doing while I've been sick is I've been adding more and more of my old articles to the archive over on the Substack. So now the Substack search isn't great. They're working on that right now. But if you basically search on the Substack for a topic, you'll be able to find all the articles I wrote about that particular player or that particular subject or whatever. So I literally came across this the other day because the article doesn't exist online anymore because the website I wrote it for doesn't exist anymore. There was a League of Legends player went to an event. In fact, look, I've got the article. I actually dug this up. I'll just read it from this point onwards, and then you'll get the point of why it's a super strange story. One player's performance had been noticeably subpar, that of the team's support player, Richard Valkyrin Royer. As a steady performer, it was out of character, but it was noticeably bad, and those that watched the game talked about how Royer had bottled it, that nerves had got to him on the big occasion. It was clear that a lot of the responsibility for the team falling at this hurdle was going to be laid at his feet, as is the rigor for players these days. A Reddit thread addressing the chatter was created. However, it wasn't filled with the usual excuses, apologies to the fans, and vows to improve. The title gave away its contents. A tale of an unwanted hotel guest, and then in parentheses, Pax. Incidentally, despite having garnered a lot of attention and making the front page of the subreddit, subsequently the content of the post was deleted by moderators. Go figure. It's also virtually impossible to find all reference to the incident on the internet. With that in mind, for the sake of posterity, here is the full version of the post as written by Royer. Hey guys, it's Valkyrin. I played support this weekend for Cognitive Gaming. I literally just got back to my house, but I wanted to make it a point to come here and apologise. My play on Sunday was embarrassing for me. I feel as if I let down every Cognitive fan and all of my supporters. Normally, I'm a significant force within the team because of my help with picks, bans and calls I make during the game. On Sunday, however, I was extremely distracted due to having collectively 4 hours of sleep over 2 days. This was caused by a chain of unforeseeable events. I know that nothing I say makes up for my play on Sunday, but I wanted to tell of my PAX experience nonetheless. I took off school starting Monday to get on a good sleeping schedule and to get focused for the tournament. I flew out on Thursday and arrived with the team in Seattle that night. I ended up swapping room assignments. For simplicity's sake, we just traded keycards with a teammate so that 2 closer friends could room together. This left me rooming with our manager, Zach. The room we were assigned had a queen-size bed and a very small cot to sleep on. Our hotel was pretty nice, but our room was definitely one of the worst rooms. Going into Friday, the team all made an effort to keep it low-key and relax. We spent some time prepping for NWE, that was the team they were playing, but we called it a night fairly early. Zach took the cot and let me have the bed for the weekend. I slept. Now, by the way, it's just ridiculous. This is like literally what esports was back in the day. Even the talent on the broadcasts, we all used to bunk together. Everyone shared rooms because you couldn't afford separate hotel rooms. I slept well going into the 10 a.m. game against NWE. The first game wasn't close, but the second game turned on some of the great plays the team made together, which I think had a lot to do with how relaxed we were. After winning, we walked around PAX, hanging out and enjoying the event. Our sponsor took us out to dinner that night to a nice Thai restaurant. Afterwards, we went to an exclusive LAN cafe that wasn't officially open yet and got to use their computers and play around for free. We get back to the hotel late, but in good spirits. I took a shower and got ready to sleep. Around a half hour later at 1 a.m., we get a knock at the door. Zach answers it. And it's someone that I will refer to as Bob. I don't want this to turn into a witch hunt, but Bob is actually a known member of the LoL community. He works on small tournaments and events and is trying to get bigger work from Riot. Bob comes in and starts chatting with Zach. Bob just keeps talking for an hour while I'm laying in bed waiting for him to leave. Despite how drowsy I am at this point, I hear these comments crystal clear. Bob, this is the quote, "Hey, man, do you mind if I crash here tonight?" Zach, the manager, "Sure, that's no problem, as long as Valkyrin doesn't mind." I said it was okay for the first night because we didn't have a game. Bob then abruptly jumps in bed with me. I'm so shocked and tired that I'm unable to speak. I just turn around and stare at him. It's a queen-size bed, but I'm not going to share it with a person I don't know. Unfortunately, my stare doesn't work, and Bob gets comfy in the bed before falling asleep. As astounded as I am, I try to get some sleep as 3 a.m. rolls around. Even more unfortunately for me, Bob is a highly mobile sleeper. He would just randomly convulse and roll around the bed. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep. Zach gets up at 8 a.m. to go to PAX. I want to go, but I'm too tired. Bob stays asleep in my bed until close to 10 a.m., exactly 24 hours before the finals. I sit there hoping he will leave so that I can sleep, but you can guess this doesn't happen. Instead of getting up and going to enjoy the conference, he stays laying in bed, surfing the internet on his phone. I get up and shower, still hoping he would leave, but he was still there when I finished. I get dressed, hoping I can just go get food and come back and get some rest. As I'm leaving, Bob follows me and asks if I would like to get food with him. I told him I was going to get food, but then continued to walk, but he just followed. When I stopped at a restaurant, he hinted he didn't have any money. He asked if I would split a Danish with him. There's a joke there. It's puerile. It's beneath me. But you have to ask what Anders was doing. At this point, I'm trying to keep from showing how livid I was that this person just showed up at PAX with no money and no rooming situation and assumed he could steer with a Challenger Team 1 series from qualifying for the promotion games. I ignore that I'm hungry and go back to the hotel. He follows me. I just sat in the lobby and waited for my manager to get back. Bob sat across from me and texted someone. Finally, my manager comes back and I sneak off to get food while my manager was talking about something with him. Later, I finally meet up with my team at the LAN centre. I tell my team about Bob ganking my bed and they just laugh it off. At midnight, I leave to go to bed. This is around 7 hours from when I needed to be up for the game. I asked Zach if Bob was going to try and sleep in my room again. Zach said no, and that Bob had previously made plans to take Zach and his friend out to dinner, but that Bob never responded to calls that day. I take a shower and get ready for bed. I fall asleep immediately, but it wasn't until 3 a.m. that things got really weird. I randomly awake to my bed shaking. I quickly grabbed my phone to see what was happening. Bob was in my bed asleep and was rolling around. At this point, I'm confused, exhausted, and furious. I grab my pants and head down to the lobby. As I get to the lobby, I realise that I can't have Bob thrown out of the room because I wasn't officially a member of that room. My teammate and I had swapped key cards and my name wasn't on the room. I felt really cornered, so I just sat in the lobby until 6 a.m. The only explanation at this point was that Zach had let Bob come into the room while I was asleep. This was only a few hours before we had to play Complexity, and my sleep was ruined for 2 nights in a row. I grabbed my shit out of the room once Zach was awake, but I didn't want to start an argument before the game. Bob then follows us, gets on our shuttle to PAX. The entire ride, I feel like beating the shit out of him. I know my body, and I know how well I play when I have no sleep. Anyway, he goes on to describe the games. They lose. Afterwards, I tell my team what happened, and they're really mad at our manager for letting it happen. It was at this point that Zach says he thought that I had let Bob in the previous night and was just as confused. At this point, we realise Bob had a key card to our room the whole time. We figured out that on Saturday night, Bob pretended to be Zach and lied to the front desk, claiming he left his wallet and key card in the room, so they gave him a key card. The rest of the weekend, I was honestly scared I might be killed by this maniac. I don't know too much about identity theft or impersonation charges, but what Bob did seemed illegal to me. Truthfully, any permission he had to stay in our room was taken away after Friday night. He should not have been in our room Saturday or Sunday. That was my PAX experience, one of the most anticipated events in my life, with one of the strangest outcomes. The other part of this, I went and started asking around about, who Bob was. And it wasn't a particularly well-kept secret. I was able to sort of verify it with a ton of players. And basically, it was a caster that was, working the events. I mean, I want to say a caster, like aspiring caster. Guy called Rapid, and he was doing the North American Challenger League, and basically he went to the event to sort of just hang out, but was doing that thing weirdos sort of do, where they're just relying on the kindness of strangers to fucking oh, can I sleep on your floor, can I do this, can I do that. But anyway, so I remember publishing this. I wrote this article and published this full story, and it sort of fucked up I think Rapid's reputation. He was cast out after that, rightly so. But obviously it's I don't know what he's doing now. I don't know what Valkyrin's doing now. I don't know what anyone's doing now. But yeah, basically you just sort of had this weird fucked up caster turned up to an event, got in a bed with a player, kept them up all night because he was having full fucking exorcist dreams or something, and basically ruined their tournament for them. And then people were like, oh, well, you shouldn't have let him in. And then it turned out, yeah, he just fucking essentially blagged his way into the room. Fucking crazy. So there you go. Esports. Obviously, shout out to the sponsor, NordVPN. Get yourself over to nordvpn.com/RLS. We're into another 6-month extension on our long-standing contract, which is going to take us up to close to 4 years, I think. So if you haven't signed up, do go and take advantage of it. Obviously, right now, the offer that they're doing is if you go and get the 2-year package, get an extra amount of time randomly assigned to your account, completely free of charge, because they're the one sponsor we've got at the moment. Obviously, throw all your love into them because it's good to have them. Mouse says, do you have a Dota 2 play that wowed you like the Flusher Ace that you did a content piece around? For those who don't know, back when we were doing E-League, we used to do these content pieces with some of the talent. Basically, I did one about Flusher got this ace, the one where he fakes the grenade noise so he can drop down and blah, blah, blah. So for me, it's probably got to be the Patience from Zoe turnaround. It sounds stupid. It's like a classic fucking play, but it's the way Na'Vi turned that play around is insane, and it's all on Dendy. It's crazy how bad they sort of fuck it up in a way. It's like a legendary play from Dendy, but if you've got a black hole, if you've got an Enigma on your team and you don't get the Rubik in the black hole, you're in for a bad time. So it's yeah, it's kind of a fuck up from them, but Dendy just does it so fucking well. It's just one of the great iconic Dota plays. And I'll say this as well. This is Nicera in chat. You say the calling is good in it. I actually think it's one of the best plays. Let down with one of the worst. I don't think the call has aged well at all, actually. I can play the call. Hang on.
Smoking up, and here we go.
Man. Big wraparound gank is going to be the name of the game for IG. Who leads the way? I believe it should be Zoe. They're going to cut for the shorter path. They storm up the river. Patience from Zoe. Waiting in the wings. Navi's about to be caught. Oh, there's the sleep. The surge. He catches everyone. Oh, this could be a total disaster. Vacuum in. Rabbit got everyone. The black hole as well.
So, I mean, like, for starters, like, they did catch everyone with the Naga sleep, I think. Yeah, everyone's in range for that. But they just let Dendi walk away. And the Rubik, as soon as you black hole, he
catches everyone. Oh, this could be a total disaster. Vacuum in. Rabbit got everyone. The black hole as well. Light of heaven turns it around. Ravage as well. Stolen by Dendi. Are you kidding me? They turn it around. 4 heroes dead.
5 heroes dead. Tron trying to survive. Tron's gonna go down. Puppy talked about the Naga counter. It's Light of Heaven. What's his PK?
So yeah, I don't think it's a great call. I don't think it's a great call at all. I think it's actually like it's a great play, but I think the play calling around it, like, yeah, he turned it around. But anyway, yeah, I the play's absolutely amazing. Like, Rubik's probably the hardest character in like any MOBA to master, and it gives you such a wealth of options, but you have to be able to sort of cognitively put it together like super quick in real time. And it's like, that is what Dendi does there is absolutely fucking phenomenal. But yeah, it's like they sort of did fuck it up a little bit by not getting the Rubik in the black hole, really. But whatever. Gaming Poll DK. What has been your approach towards teaching? You've been vocal about your experiences with poor shit teachers, so I was interested to hear what steps you've taken in regards to your own teaching. It's sort of kind of hard to explain or lay out because I don't think I've had a particular like methodology. It's more like reading the class and like sort of reading your students. There's like some students like to sit back and listen. Some students need to be like involved, like you have to ask them questions to keep them engaged. You also have to sort of break up your lessons. I mean, I learned about this ages ago, like back when I used to work in an office and you would do training days. When I had to train my staff, they teach you about this thing called the seabed, which is like when people's tanks are unbelievably low and nothing goes into their, brain. You've been talking for 30 minutes. That's when you need to insert like a demonstration or something that like breaks up the monotony of just information going in. There has to be something else happening. One of the things I got told not to do when I went into the class was I got told, like, don't just sit there and tell war stories. And that makes sense to me, because it's like, if you've got a lecturer that sort of talks too much, I mean, I went to university, it's fucking boring. But the funny thing is, all of the students that come in to the seminars, they want me to tell the war stories. Like, a lot of them are all like esports savvy, and so they know who I am. And the course that I taught the last 2 semesters has me on the course, has the iBuyPower story on the course. And that wasn't my choice. I didn't design the course originally. So they're learning about me and that story, and then I'm asking questions about it, and then coming into a seminar with me. So I'm probably going to take that part of it out. But equally, I'll say, like, I think being able to tell, like, a funny anecdote about something illustrative of the broader point, because obviously each week you're doing a different part of the module. So, like the opening module is learning about the anatomy of match fixing, but not through esports, but actually based on the 1919 World Series, what they call the Black Sox scandal. And the reason for that is it's to illustrate that even though esports is this big new shiny technology and, oh my God, it's like got all this jargon and you might not know what's going on, the mechanics of match fixing is all of the same. You could go back to like ancient Rome and, like look up gladiatorial match fixing, and it's the same. All the mechanics are the same. The corruptors, the beneficiaries, blah, blah. So, that's kind of a cool thing to do, I think, is just to be able to sort of tell one anecdote that's like super illustrative of the broader point that you're trying to make. So I guess that, but mostly it's like I play it by ear because all the students are very, very different. One thing that definitely surprised me I thought it was going to be just a bunch of Zoomers that wanted to play video games professionally, and they saw like an easy course. But actually, I think I got like, out of all of the semesters I taught, I would probably say that the majority are like mature students with jobs. So that was super surprising. But yeah, if you want to enroll, you can go to the University of New Haven, Connecticut, and enroll in Richard Lewis's course. Professor Declan Hill as well is there, so you can get yourself in. The Patreon question from Rekovic relates to Zoomers. He says, there's a lot to complain about Zoomers. They wear gloves when eating burgers. They do that, don't they, the Zoomers? They don't like to get their hands dirty in regards to anything. They refuse to Google simple things. They do that, don't they? They do refuse. They say, on God, no cap, for real. They do that, don't they? I think the one that annoys me the most is no shot. I don't know why no shot literally became a thing because of a typo, and I think that's cringe. It was like in the early internet, you had like te instead of TEH and prawn instead of porn, and they used to call it like leet speak, and it was cringe, and a lot of it was just predicated on common typos people made on the internet. And no shot is just meant to be no shit, but I and O are next to each other on the keyboard, and now everyone pretends like no shot is a real thing, and it's not. It's just, you're just embracing stupidity. Anyway, whatever. They live in Georgia. A lot of Zoomers do live in Georgia. Very young population in Georgia. But are there any positives from that generation you see coming through? So, I mean, for me, I'll say this. The one thing you've got to give it to Zoomers is a Zoomer will ridicule you for being old or being bald or being fat. All of those things remain true. But I will say they don't seem to like pick on people for like being gay or being different in some way. Like I kind of almost feel that like that type of bigotry is like almost a preserve of like boomers that like sort of never grew up, you know? I think overall, as a generation, they seem to be a lot more understanding of certainly sexual dynamics. But just in general, the things they seem to mock you for is, it's more like a classic, you're old, you don't understand our generation, man. You know, kind of more like a throwback to like the 60s, 70s kind of shit, where it's like just by virtue of being old, you're ostracized, or so they think. Like, what, you know, young people can't conceptualize of the fact that your internal mind won't change much. Once you hit like 24, 25, you're pretty much set as who you are. And then all that happens is you just get older, you just get fatter, you just get balder. But the Zoomer inside is still screaming out, you know, from this terrible new form. You're the same person with the same values. You're still hip to technology and music and all of that. But of course, the next generation that comes along says, haha, you're a boomer. You don't understand what we're doing, and you got no better do. But they won't give you a chance. And that's how it should be. There should always be generational friction. It's actually good for society that when young generations reject the ideology of older generations, just as a matter of fact, it gives them sort of a freedom to create their own ideals, ideas, their own art. And not all of it's going to be a winner, but at least it's going to be new and it's going to be fresh. And that's like a good thing. So there you go. Say what you will about Zoomers, but they got that going for them. Faramir, you have traveled all around the world for esports. Are there places you'd still like to go? So I'm really trying to think, because I've done a lot of traveling. I did a lot of traveling pre-esports. And it's like kind of fucked up, because there's places geographically I would like to see. But there's a lot of places geographically I would like to see that unfortunately have been taken over by like tyrannical regimes, or, you know, regimes that certainly aren't conducive to my own political outlook and stuff like that. You know, yes, see, there's an example, right? Egypt, sad claps X says don't go to Egypt. And it's like, I've got Egyptian friends, man. And, you know, what's happened in their country is like dreadful, and yet it's the cradle of civilization right there. You know, you've got all these like incredible things. You know, it's always been a popular tourist resort, but yeah, it's like I wouldn't want to risk going to Egypt, you know, anymore, for example. And it's like, it's sad that I'm probably gonna live and die and not get to look at, you know, one of these like towering monuments to like an incredible past civilization that kind of like frames humanity in like very unique perspective. And you can't go there just because a bunch of dictatorial assholes fucking took over the country, and it sucks, you know. So Egypt's an example of that. I'm trying to think of a place I would like to go that I can go. Like, it's greatly upsetting to me I'll never be able to visit Brazil, because I really would have liked to have come to Brazil. But unfortunately, I know I get recognized by one esports fans and I just get a machete in my face, which never really appealed to me as a way to die, frankly. And Brazil's like, because so much of like, I've been so interested growing up in Brazilian culture and read so many books about it, so many books about like the history of Brazil, you know, music from Brazil, fucking football, obviously a huge part of it. You know, it's like, it's sad to not to be able to get to go there, especially when all my friends who do go there all tell me it's one of the best places they've ever been. I go to Lisbon every like couple of years. I want to say every 12, it's probably a bit more spread out than that now, but like every 3-4 years. I love Lisbon. You know, I love Pessoa, the writer. The Book of Disquiet. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of tough because I don't want to go to Australia. Like, I have zero interest in that. Like, zero interest. Japan. There you go. And I'm going. I'm going this year. So actually, yeah. That's the obvious answer. I guess because I've already like planned out the trip. It's kind of not really at the forefront of my thinking. But Japan's got to be the great one. So I'm looking forward to going there and seeing it. It seems to be a very like unique place. And I'm not into all that weeb shit, but as I understand it, most Japanese people aren't either, so we're gonna get along like a house on fire, no doubt. Also, I see that thing you can do now where if you get like a good phone, not like the old shit ones I have, I'm gonna get a new phone for you can talk into the phone and say like, you know, I hate weeaboos, and it will be like dosha dosha da, 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 and it'll like say it in Japanese to them, and then you've seen them, right? So I'm going to get one of them before I go out. Yeah, like, got it all planned. Bon says, I loved the Zinch reference on one of your recent streams. How long have you followed Warhammer 40k? So, obviously, if you were, like, a kid of my generation... So, basically, like, this is how I knew that my mother had got me into the middle class. Basically... I knew because I could suddenly have hobbies. So it was like when I lived on one of the worst estates in Britain, like an old colliery estate, where basically it's like as soon as you left your house, you could be like plunged into combat with other fucking starving children in various states of undress. I mean, I'm not joking. Kids used to run around my estate like naked. Their parents didn't even like put clothes on them in the morning. And you would just see like kids like just, you know, starkers, like just running around, throwing stones at each other, throwing stones at windows, going into other people's gardens. Like, you know, they would just come into our garden where I lived. We had a tiny little garden, and they would come into our garden and they would like dig up our garden. They would like dig up all the plants and like take any plants, any plant life, any trees. They would do that. So basically, like, the only thing I had growing up was, I mean, to be fair, my mother, raised by a single parent, my mother did grind and graft to get me a Spectrum Plus 2, which sort of started the whole love affair with video games. That was basically like I should say a 48K first. We had a 48K and then the Plus 2 came later. But you know, she got me a Spectrum, which is where you loaded games off a cassette, and that was probably like £100, which was a lot of money at the time. Maybe £80, but regardless, like a lot of money. So basically all I sort of had was like games and books. And they were all very like socially insular, isolated, stay indoors, read a book, play a video game. And that was perfect because I couldn't leave the house, essentially. We were like hostages on our council estate. I didn't have a dad. He was in prison. All the other kids wanted to fight. If you fought and won, their cousins, brothers, and then eventually the father, they would just come and beat the shit out of you. Like, it didn't matter if you were like 8, 9, 10. A 40-year-old man would just kick the shit out of you in broad daylight, and that was just how it was. It was just like, that's how the estate maintained a pecking order, you know? So it was just better to stay indoors. And so when my mother got with my stepdad, and he had his own house. You know, it wasn't a council house. He had his own house, and it was a detached house in the country. You know, suddenly I was going to school. Yeah, there were bullies, but it wasn't, if I see you outdoors, I will batter you with sticks and stones and put you in hospital bullies. They were like, ah ha ha, your trainers are shit bullies. And I loved that. I loved being ridiculed for being poor, because that's just feelings. It's not you're getting attacked, you know. It didn't last like that. There were still fights to be had. There was still violence to be perpetrated against me. But anyway, back to 40K. There was a group of kids at that school. They were in that weird little social strata where it's like wealthy nerds. So not nerds in the sort of like, you know, like they can't talk, but like wealthy nerds. They have nerdy hobbies, nerdy expensive hobbies, and they're not cool. They're not in the top social strata, but they're not outcasts either. They just sit nicely in the middle. Nobody picks on them. Nobody bullies them. They got money. They get to do what they want. And so I was kind of like welcomed in by that group. And a lot of those kids played 40K. And so 40K was basically like a super expensive hobby. And I was like saying to my mother, you know, like, fuck, man, like, you know, I better start buying some fucking Space Marines or whatever, you know, like, because if I can't turn up and just bring some models along to show I'm really down with this shit, then, you know, maybe they're gonna start picking on me for being poor again, or whatever it is. So I actually started, I can even tell you this, there's a Games Workshop in Middlesbrough. It used to have one of the big dudes at Games Workshop used to work there. Like one of the guys that actually used to like write the books. Not like, or used to be an illustrator. It wasn't like Jez Goodwin. It was like Ian something. And he's like well known. He's like a Games Workshop legend. So I started hanging around there. And basically, I always looked a little bit older. So I started like hanging around there. They all assumed I was like 16, 17 when I was really like 13, 14, you know. They were like super cool. Like that was like a really good spot to be in because, you know, I basically realized like I could use this hobby to sort of like stay out of shit at school, but I also was meeting like older people. And like, for example, when Reservoir Dogs was banned in the UK, it was a guy called Chris at Games Workshop that gave me a fucking VHS copy like when I was like 13 or something. So I was like the king. I was like, you want to come watch Reservoir Dogs, that banned movie? You know, I got that through Games Workshop. So I actually went and got a part-time job at a restaurant. And so I started using my money to like buy 40K so I could fit in with the kids. And eventually, you know, like I had a pretty good collection. I didn't even really like the game. I always preferred Warhammer Fantasy, but no one played that. And so, yeah, I used to fucking turn up, you know, like when we used to come into school and I'd be like, yeah, I just got this fucking land speeder. Look at this. It's got a Lehman Russ tank. Deal with that. They'd be like, holy shit. For a poor kid, you fucking got some banging shit, you know, and it's because I was working and getting it myself. Started out as a pot washer, so in a restaurant. So, yeah, it was like, anyway, I've always sort of kept up with that. I don't know about now because I think Games Workshop's a shitty company now. But I think that back in my day, I think it was a really, really good hobby that encouraged, if you could afford it, it encouraged socialization. Like, you would go to Games Workshop, you would hang out there, you would bring in your painted models, there would be games nights almost every week. It used to be something, man. It really did. So I won't wax all lyrical about it and say that like it improved my life or whatever, but it's definitely been like like an ever-present thing that I've always been super aware of. And it's like a long, long time. I mean, you're talking, that's like 95 to put it in context. But obviously, I mean, shit, I wanted to do something to, like, stop drinking and writing so much. Because when I write, I drink. And when I drink, I look to write. And it's just, like, this horrible cycle. So I got, like, a Dominatus or whatever. I got, like, a Dominatus box set. And I was going to paint the models, but then just never did, Never did. So there you go. Yeah, basically, yeah, I know, it's like everyone in the chat, wow, things were so much better. Things were better before. It's not nostalgia. So, yeah, there was squats. Squats was still a thing back then. I think I even had the Squat Biker Gang box set. just as an ironic, and the squat snipers. I remember the squat snipers, the stunty units, all being a bit overpowered. And I had the Ogrin Ripper squad or whatever. I had that. That was beardy as fuck. But then it was like, because this was coming out back when it was still called like Rogue Trader. I think this was like 2nd edition. And so suddenly then what happened was they really went hard on the Realms of Chaos stuff. And then Chaos was the beardy units. And then obviously Games Workshop entered a golden age. I stopped playing 40k because I had a choice of, I could play the new edition of Blood Bowl, which was wicked. I could play Necromunda, best game they ever made. I could play Gorka Morka. That was actually low-key fucking sick. Trying to think what else, man. There was like just every game they seemed to touch in the Mordheim. Mordheim was fucking unreal. You know, like they just had a run of games that they just made in like the mid-90s that were just fucking mid to late 90s that were just all insane. So King of Blades asks, what are your thoughts on Adam Apicella leaving Esports Engine? Related to the buyout or something else? Yeah, this is an interesting one because I know Adam watches and listens to my shit and he might not see this, but I was very harsh on Adam. And, you know, obviously by extension, Sundance. I don't know Mike Sepso as well. You know, Mike Sepso's the type of dude I'll get a drink with if I see him. But like Sundance, like Sonny and Adam, I fucking love those guys. And we would always make a point to socialize whenever we were nearby. They would always like invite me to whatever they had going on if I could get out there to the States. You know, I've got a lot of love for those two gentlemen. And the Vindex buyout was like very upsetting to me because I thought they would be a holdout. I get it. And I said, like, you know, all the posturing that people do in public, like Adam, you know, obviously knows I'm talking about him, you know, because Adam's a guy who's like said, you know, fuck Trump. January the 6th was an insurrection. He'd fight Tucker Carlson, you know, just like ridiculous things like this because American politics is just driving everyone insane. And then it's like, you know, oh, you work for a company now that's owned by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. I wonder who's worse, him or Donald Trump, you know? And so I made that point. I think it was on a Four Horsemen podcast. And I'm sure Adam saw it and Adam heard it and I'm sure it hurt his feelings. And then obviously what we didn't know when I said that was that Adam wasn't going to stick around with the company. And I have to believe, knowing Adam, I have to believe he doesn't want to work for people like that and doesn't want to work with ESL guys, doesn't want to be part of something that, you know, obviously is bad. And if he got his money and got his share, he's not under any impetus to sort of stick around. So, you know, I'll definitely recant that statement that Adam Apicella was a coward. I'll 100% walk that back because at least he walked away and didn't want to become assimilated by the Death Star and the evil empire. And when you're wrong, you're wrong, and when you're right, you're right. So I think personally it's not related to the buyout in the sense that they got rid of him. I'm sure ESL would love Adam Apicella. Adam Apicella has a lot of currency in a lot of communities, a lot of goodwill built up over a period of just being authentic, honest, and public facing. Everything ESL isn't. And so they would love to have somebody like that they could wheel out to give them credibility. And him not wanting to be used in that way, I think speaks to his character. So I absolutely will recant that statement. And I think my read on it would be he just didn't want to work with shit people. And so that's fair enough. Walkie Chalky of Coding, which is Watch Doge. Yeah, everyone's changing their names on the Discord. Asks, what are your thoughts on the way a newsroom newspaper is portrayed in season 5 of The Wire? Is the portrayal realistic? Was the portrayal of journalistic ethics ahead of its time? So it's very interesting. So I'm glad you didn't ask. What's that cunt? Aaron Sorkin. You know, he did the newsroom, and that is nothing like a newsroom, nothing like a news studio. That's absolute trash and bears no resemblance to, you know, what it is. But the newsroom in The Wire is pretty good. It's pretty spot on. I've never worked in an American newsroom, and I've never worked in a national newspaper newsroom, obviously. I've done local, but everything seems to be, like, authentic. The open plan of the desk, but obviously the senior people having offices, the columnists being on their own little island. They don't even have to come in. The editors and sub-editors being out on the floor because they have to, like, jump into copy on the fly. the way Gus is walking around, asking for his 3 o'clock, the way they do the pitch meetings, the way they have the sub-editors who read the copy and then tell you that it's wrong. For example, that scene off the top of my head where they say, you don't evacuate buildings. Things like that. That's actually all very realistic to what a good, high standard newspaper will do, and all of those things are true to the type. A sub-editor is very much a nerdy, perfect English type person. So I had to laugh. It's funny talking about this. There was a Reddit thread for the Evil Geniuses story I did the other day, and somebody said someone should teach Richard Lewis how to use a comma. And this is the interesting thing. What people don't realize is that, first of all, when you're a writer, a creative writer, which I'm definitely more a creative writer than a technical writer, it's not that I don't know how to use commas or don't know how to use grammar properly, because I do, obviously, right? But what happens is when you write something and then you rewrite something and you start fucking with the tenses and the words, sometimes little bits get lost. But what's super interesting is you can always spot someone immediately who has zero creative flair to them, because and they're at school or college at the latest, because you grow out of that. You grow out of the need for everything to be grammatically correct, linguistically perfect, because creativity often takes you into parts where it's like, a turn of phrase that's really like ugly and not, imprecise, but it fits what you're trying to say. And basically what it is these are like super nerdy kids that write to like the essay standard, and they go, yeah, it's actually disgusting, like his writing is so terrible. And it's like, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, having had like fiction editors rather, like look at my work, I know I write to a sort of a high standard of creative writing, even if it is at the expense of little technical imperfections. And it's only people that will never have that creative aspect that tunnel in on that as a crutch. And sub-editors at prestigious publications, they are the nerds. They are the super nerdy guys. Everything they spot. And if you have a good sub-ed, like when I worked at the Daily Dot, we had like a really good sub-editor process. Kevin Morris was the best editor I ever worked with, and he made all of my writing shine. And it will always be better if it goes through an edit, but this idea that if I took a comma there and I put it there instead of there, and also, by the way, Americans don't even understand things like the English comma and stuff like this, So Americans just need to shut the fuck up about the English language forever until you can actually, speak it and spell it properly. There's a thought. But, and a lot of these kids are Americans, and, it's like people who correct you and go, look, he spelt a word wrong. And it's because I've used an S instead of a Z. And it's just so embarrassing, But anyway, the portrayal of the actual apparatus at a good newspaper is spot on, and it should be. David Simon wrote for the same newspaper. He was the crime beat writer at the Baltimore Sun, which is the newspaper portrayed. The idea that David Simon couldn't portray it accurately would be ridiculous. The thing about the journalistic ethics is, I go back and forth on it. There's been multiple examples. There was that German journalist that did exactly what that guy did in season 5 of The Wire. Let me get his name, actually. Yeah, it was Klaus Hendrik Relotius. He was a guy who basically, he wrote for Der Spiegel, and he just made up facts. He invented people that didn't exist and interviewed them. He completely fabricated conversations, and he did it in at least 14 of his articles, and the big scandal is called Spiegelgate. And that's exactly what the guy in season 5 of The Wire is doing with the homeless killer and everything else, and obviously goes on to win a Pulitzer, which is like this super sort of damning, kind of the whole point of The Wire is every season it's about failing institutions. And so season 5, be under no illusion, the fact that it ends in the montage with him winning the Pulitzer Prize, it's about how journalism has fell. It's a negative portrayal of the institution of journalism, because, if it bleeds, it leads. All the editors were like, no, we're going to go with we're gonna go with what this guy is writing about the homeless killer, etc. Even though his editor Gus knows it's all bullshit. There's no notes. There's no proof any of it's real. Now, in terms of how realistic it is, it's absolutely realistic because we've had multiple real life examples. The Spiegelgate's just the one that comes off the top of my head. But what I will also say, the idea that there's some sort of like diligent group of journalists within the newspaper that are willing to go against their own and catch these other journalists, that's where it's unrealistic. Because unfortunately, much like doctors, teachers, any other group of professionals that feel put upon by society, they have this cabal-like code of silence, code of ethics that is sort of, we stand together and we defend our own. And that's been the big problem with journalism, is that journalists won't even call out the journalists that ruin the profession by violating all the sort of sacred ethics that you are sworn to uphold. And yeah, police officers, another one, right? The fucking, back the blue, right? These things are bad. These things are fundamentally bad. And I think, the idea that there was like, they all knew he was full of shit and Gus was going out of his way to get him and ultimately it cost him his job or however it finishes at the end. That's the fantasy component. Because in real life, journalists will just say, how dare you call this journalist a liar? How dare you say we have no ethics? I mean, the whole existence of something like Gamergate and before it, whatever it was called, Journo List. There you go. The Journo List. Where, it was proven that journalists collude to do copy even when they work at competing newspapers to suit a political agenda. The only reason we know what these things are is because journalists just can't be trusted. They don't care about misinformation. They just want to have the exclusive right to peddle it. That's the problem with modern journalism, and that's where The Wire is very naive. I noticed that about David Simon, another guy who felt a Trump derangement syndrome, which is super sad. But, journalists can't help themselves. They say outrageous things like, the only scandal Obama ever had was that he wore that tan suit, and it's like, I don't know. Maybe drone striking a wedding was probably pretty bad. Maybe, drone striking an American citizen to death wasn't great. Maybe hounding a journalist and changing whistleblower laws wasn't great, but whatever, like Fast and Furious, but whatever. Unfortunately, journalists are just beyond saving right now. That's it. They need to get replaced by AI and all like end up homeless and starving, and then maybe they can reflect on, oh yeah, all of that shit we swore we were going to do, probably should have done some of that. Zumba, $100 patron here. I would like to see a piece of Richard going through comments on Reddit and stuff saying he's wrong about CS2 and what about today, dickheads to them. Well, you got your wish. We already did that. So there you go. It didn't have the Vine sound effect in it, though. Mouse asks for memories on 1995. Oh, no, memories 1995. So I looked this up. This is a fucking anime. You want me to review an anime? That's what Mouse is making me do. He wants me to review an anime. I Googled this before. So it's like $100. I'm going to have to watch an anime. He's paying for it. Yeah, so it's just called Memories. It's from 1995. Let's read the overview here. How long is it? It's only 113 minutes. That's fine. Storyline. Memories is made up of 3 separate science fiction stories. In the first, Magnetic Rose, 4 space travelers are drawn into an abandoned spaceship that creates a world created by one woman's memories. In Stink Bomb, a young lab assistant accidentally transforms himself into a human biological weapon set on a direct course for Tokyo. That's never happened before, has it, in an anime? That's not Akira. The final episode, Cannon Fodder, depicts a day in the life of a city whose entire purpose is the firing of cannons at an unseen enemy. Listen, the first one and the second one sound like intriguing sci-fi concepts, little miniature Twilight Zone episodes. I can get behind that. I'll watch that. It's also, if it is from 1995, it is when anime was sort of still good. Remember, I've got nothing against Akira and Ghost in the Shell and Ninja Scroll and all of the Studio Ghibli stuff, which, by the way, I don't even count as anime, even though it probably is. That's all fine. You know, it's like, it's before every fucking anime protagonist was a fucking 25-year-old man, but with the fucking emotional growth of a 14-year-old boy, you know? So, 2 Ton says, what's your favourite obscure, unusual swear word or insult? It's got to be melt. I went a long, long time, many years in fact, where it was bell end. I used to love telling foreigners about bell end, because foreigners don't have bell end. They don't have that. I've told Finnish people about bell end. They love it. They love bell end. You know, Swedes love bell end. When you have to explain to them, what is this thing you say? This bell end? I don't know why they're Dutch here, but whatever. You get that. And you go, oh, the bell end is, you know how the tip of the penis, the glans, is sort of shaped like a bell. Oh, yes, we have these bells. We have bells. It is shaped like a bell. It is a bell end. Oh, that is classic, and then that's it. Like, everybody loves the fucking bell end, like, you know what I mean? Like, I've never met, like, any culture that doesn't know what a bell end is, and then you tell them, oh, we call it a bell end, everyone cries well after. It's a great icebreaker. It's a great icebreaker, the bell end. But over time, Jay says the Finnish also call dick an egg, which makes me wonder about what's going on with Finnish men, but But anyway, it's melt now. Because I think melt, it's sort of like nobody really understands what it is. He's a melt. Because it means like you're an idiot, but also melt down, your head's melted, brain meltosis, melt. And it's got a nice sort of sound like you fucking melt. And it's also an insult that I think, like, it hits you right in the fucking soft spot. You call somebody a melt. Nobody likes to be called a melt. But it's PG. In fact, it's not even PG. It's universal. Sit down, you melt. You can say that in front of kids. No one's going to cover a kid's ears. Or, excuse me, I'm out here with my child. Shut up, you melt. You melt. So I've really grown towards liking melt quite a lot. And you will notice on Twitter, on the rare occasion I reply to anyone on Twitter, if anyone says anything stupid on Twitter, they just get melted now. Fuck off, you melt. Like, you're a melt, So, big fan of that, 2 Ton. Biku, what is the best Indian restaurant you had recently in the London or UK in general area if you've had none in London? So, I obviously don't live in London and don't eat curry in London because I don't live in London. It's got nothing to do with London. I'm sure there's some incredible curry houses. But I'm glad you asked this, because I want to find this. It just had me in stitches. Here it is, right? So obviously in Birmingham, we got a ton of fucking wicked curry houses. And I'm not going to get into the Balti Triangle, because I talked about that a million times, right? But here's what I will tell you. So first of all, the one place everyone will tell you to go to over in the Balti Triangle, Ladypool Road, they're all going to tell you to go to Shababs, right? Shababs is like the Birmingham institution. It's a super touristy destination. It is good curry. I've had it there. But when I was looking this up, right, so I'll get this out the way. Best curry house, hands down, is Lasan in the Jewellery Quarter. It's fucking wicked. And they do different regional dishes, which you don't get a lot of. You go to Sparkbrook, you're going to get very, standard. It's what I call, the British style of curry. And it's cooked it's cooked to perfection a lot of places, There's some old school places people don't know about, like Salim's and stuff like that. But the one everyone knows is Shababs. And, you go in there and everything you get's going to be spot on and blah, blah, blah. But Lasan, it's just unreal. It's like, I went in there and they do, Goan style food. Goa is obviously lots of seafood. And you can get, Goan-style fucking mackerel and shit like this in an Indian restaurant. It's all, they do, the menu's always changing. It's all, local stuff. It's super wicked. It was, really, 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 really nice. And so if I was recommending one curry house in Birmingham right now, incredibly, it wouldn't even be in the Balti Triangle. It would be over in the Jewellery Quarter. But, anyway, unrelated, right, to that. Let me get this for you. One of the most ridiculous reviews I've ever seen, because I was looking up to see how Shababs was doing, because it's one of the things everyone criticizes it. It's so popular, so touristy, that it's people can't even get served in a good time and stuff. So it gets loads of bad ratings and whatnot. So hang on, let me show you this, right? This review is the fakest review I've ever seen. Never have I ever been served anything so revolting in my life. Ordered from here early hours. What I thought would be a lovely curry turned into a maggot fest. Trying to pass them off as rice. Not one grain of rice. All dead maggots, and possibly a worm, and a couple of slugs. What the hell? Spent near £40 on fish food. Just Eat have been informed. Environmental health and the papers are next. I'll make sure you never get to do this to someone else again, my friend. No, my friend ate all of his, not realising. I'm horrified at the audacity of them. Now, who believes that? Like, we've all seen Lost Boys. Just absolutely mental. But yeah, so that would be the curry house. I would recommend Lasan. I don't even think it's a secret anymore. I think Gordon Ramsay had it on the F word or something. So it's a well-known joint. You'll have to book in advance, but it's worth it for sure. Beggar Awesome Man asks, with advancements in AI and deepfake technology, it's going to get easier to put convincing lies out into the world. Do you think that tech will be developed that will allow us to detect the fakes? And unfortunately, I think what's going to end up happening is that's going to be largely irrelevant. One thing I've noticed is that when the media puts out something that's like provably false, it doesn't matter if it's then proven to be provably false. If it fits the prejudices and preconceptions of the people sort of absorbing the news, the correction doesn't register. You know, and again, the Trump era is so illustrative of this. You know, he told everybody to drink bleach. Never did that. That never happened. You know, and it's like, it doesn't matter if there was technology to like disprove deepfakes. People will just go along with it. There was a good example of this recently where it was like the most obvious deepfake I have ever seen got distributed by right-wing Fox types, you know? And it was Joe Biden walks off stage talking about Putin or something, and then says like to everyone backstage, do you think they believe that bullshit? And in his head is going, I don't know, Mr. President. They should believe that bullshit. It was just something like that. And it's like, you know, at the end of the day, you only have to look at the clip to know it's a lie. Because he comes out, there's a fucking microphone on the desk, and then he walks backstage and he's still talking like he's got a lav mic on. Why would he have a lav mic on? He wouldn't. But obviously, it got spread, you know, blah, blah, blows up. No one really cares that Joe Biden didn't do it. We all know Joe Biden's got dementia. We all know he is full of shit, you know? So it's like, yeah, it's fake, it's misinformation. It doesn't matter when it gets corrected. Whatever. People are just going to go along with the prejudices. So I think it's going to be terrible. I think it's going to be like a terrible era for news. I think this next election in America is going to be filth. I think it's going to make 2016 and 2020 look like, you know, legitimate political engagement, and certainly deepfakes will rear its head. But unfortunately, people just believe what they want to believe, especially in America, you know. Then the last one, I think. Any comic you are really into right now or were recently, as in not a stand-up comic, but a comic, 'cause it's from Mouse. I read Black Hammer again recently when I was like sort of in bed. It was like, you know, and that's, I'd forgotten how kind of cool that was, although I just think it's like overshadowed by other deconstructions of superhero mythos. It's never going to be Watchmen, but it probably is better than The Boys, the comic, which actually, I read that when I reread that when the TV show came out, and I sort of looked at it as sort of very juvenile, actually. And it didn't stick with me. I also reread Bad Company, the 2000 AD one, the Cruel Heart story arc, and that was really good. And that's like aged very, very well, and not a lot of people have read that. But you know, Black Hammer is actually better than I remember, whereas things like The Boys are objectively worse than I remember. So probably that will be the answer. And there you go. I've done all the questions, guys. I'm no longer a liar, no longer a fraud. So we did it. I've earned the Patreon money this month.